to invite you to reimagine museums the way I've been invited to do so in my work with Native Americans over the last 20 years. I want to share with you how Native peoples have transformed how I see the museum, its collection, and its purpose. As a curator at the University of Colorado Museum of Natural History, part of my job is to preserve museum collections for posterity. Like this pipe from the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara, or MHA Nation in North Dakota. What I want to do today is show how this pipe initiated a long-term collaboration between our museum and members of the MHA Nation, and why that's pretty remarkable. From the perspective of Native Americans, museums can be painful places to visit, in part because their peoples were represented in natural history museums instead of American history museums. And also because for over 100 years, museum displays contributed to the stereotypes of Native peoples as vanishing or frozen in the past. To some, the museum is a mausoleum, literally. It's estimated that there are 300 to 600,000 Native American bodies in museums, universities, and labs in the United States. In the past, museums didn't just collect Native American objects, they collected the bones of their ancestors and treated them as specimens. To others, the museum is a prison. What a museum catalog might identify as fetishes, a Native person may see as sacred items, living beings, locked up in dark cabinets, alone, painfully divorced from contact with their people. And sometimes the museum appears as a gatekeeper, standing between a Native researcher and his own cultural heritage in the archives. In light of this history, Native peoples are demanding that museums listen to them after decades of speaking for them. They're demanding reciprocity instead of exploitation, and they're demanding the return of their Native ancestors and sacred items, made possible through the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA. There are many ways that museums, like ours, are responding to these demands. And in doing so, we're part of a larger movement to transform relationships between museums and Native peoples. But what does this really mean? It means making museums accessible by inviting Native communities to visit collections, both virtually and in person, so they know we have this pipe. It means inviting tribes to NAGPRA consultations to review collections, like we did with Elgin Crowsbreast and Calvin Grinnell of the MHA Nation. And it means returning Native ancestors to be laid to rest and returning sacred items to be put back into ceremonial practice today, like you see here with the pipe. But it's also honoring Native people's perspectives on collections and their care. When Elgin Crowsbreast asked us to place red felt and sweetgrass in a drawer of pipes that were to remain in our museum, we were happy to do so. But above all, it's supporting Native peoples telling their own stories and following their lead, like when Elgin and Calvin and a group of MHA elders asked us to produce a video documentary with them about the life and times of the missionary who had collected the items in our museum. Elders recounted his tireless but unsuccessful attempts to stop the U.S. government from creating the Garrison Dam, which flooded the reservation's towns in 1952 and forced 90% of their population to relocate. Elders also compared living through this time to the oil boom today, sparking conversations in community and tribal college screenings about the future of their nation. But it's not enough just to do these things. We need to share how and why we do them beyond the academy. And that's actually one of my favorite things about working in a university museum. It's where academic research and scholarship meet the public. In the museum, we can make displays like this student exhibit, which explained why a ceremonial item should not be displayed. And we can also, through our museum and field studies program, teach the next generation of museum professionals the importance of consultation and collaboration. But we have to reach beyond the museum walls too, like making these websites and videos and doing community workshops, and even making comic books, like this one. in which Calvin and I and a group of tribal community members are telling the story about the repatriation of the pipe in a series that I co-produce about the repatriation law called NAGPRA Comics. So now, when I think about the idea that museums preserve things for posterity, I don't think about posterity as some general public in an undefined distant future. I think about Native peoples today, because I believe, as former Glenbow Museum Director Robert Janes once said, posterity has arrived. So let's reimagine museums as vital collaborative spaces where we work together with Native nations to support their cultural continuity, self-determination, and community well-being today. Thank you.